Welcome, one and all, to Beyond the Walls. Having dared to look beyond the narrow precincts of our physical sanctuary, we have been overjoyed by the response, by your response. The multiplicity of persons from every corner of the earth, different backgrounds, different perspectives, different needs, different gifts, has by itself been a cause for awe and celebration. In Community of Christ, we uphold the enduring principle of unity in diversity, and this is not meant to be is not meant to mean achieving unity by pressuring people with unique or substantively different experiences to conform to a standard template that is labeled normal. In other words, we're not upholding unity through conformity. Rather, we have come to appreciate that different environments and different languages lead to different challenges and experiences, and ultimately to different ideas. And it's only through openness to different ideas that we can ever learn. If we merely shared and repeated the same ideas to one another over and over, we would certainly be able to reinforce those ideas and be very comfortable in them. But we would never learn, because our environment would be a closed system and our minds would inevitably be closed as well. And so I thank all of you for what you bring to this community and for embracing the challenges it frequently can pose to our shared sense of complacency. Being called to discern the best path from enduring principles can be daunting. How much easier it is to inflexibly follow a set of very clear, narrow rules as if that were righteousness and justice. In the Gospels, people asked Jesus to set out a list of commandments. Instead, he gave them a foundational principle: love. Love God, love your neighbor as yourself. Nevertheless, Christians still wanted rules. They complained that Paul's converts, for example, weren't keeping kosher and following a particular interpretation of Mosaic law. In frustration, Paul ultimately shouted that if you put your trust in law and legalism, Christ will be of no value to you at all. Nevertheless, human nature prefers the simplicity of following rules and enforcing social norms to the serious work of discerning from principles. And really, we've been no different in the restoration and the reorganization. Folks in this congregation here, they frequently tell stories of growing up in a church that utterly forbid social horrors like face cards and, worst of all, dancing. We've moved out of that simple time and hopefully more closely approached the religion taught by Paul and Jesus. The path we are on is anything but easy, but I believe it comes more closely to the peaceable one. With the Spirit's help, then, let us discern from enduring principles the path ahead as we endeavor to approach God's heavenly commonwealth. And with that in mind, I'd like to go live to Guelph, Ontario, where we're very pleased that Eliza Horning is on hand to lead us in our call to worship. Eliza, welcome back to Beyond the Walls.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here. Our call to worship today comes from the 147th section of the Doctrine and Covenants, verse 5. The hopes of my people and the goals of my church, while not yet fully realized, and at times, and to many, seemingly distant, are closer to realization than many recognize. It is yet day when all can work. The night will come when for many of my people, opportunity to assist will have passed. Let us recognize the Holy One and the mission to which we are called to today. Amen.
Amen. And now I invite you to join with the Beyond the Walls choir in singing our opening hymn, number 145, Restless Weaver.
us your creative vision, with us weave your world anew. Where earth's fragile web is raveling, help us mend each broken strand. Bless our urgent bold endeavors, cleansing water, air, and land. Through the Spirit's inspiration, offering health where once was pain. Strengthen us to be the stewards of your world made whole again. When our violent lust for power ends in lives abused and torn, from compassion's sturdy fabric fashion hope and trust reborn. Where injustice rules as tyrant, give us courage, God, to dare live our dreams of transformation, make our lives incarnate prayer. Restless Weaver, still conceiving new life now and yet to be, binding all your vast creation in one living tapestry. You have called us to be weavers, let your love guide all we do. With your reign of peace our pattern, we will weave your world anew.
Thank you so much to the Beyond the Walls Choir for your ministry of music. I thank so many people who, week after week, are sharing their voices with all of us, which Leandro blends together to form this amazing chorus. We also thank this week Stacey Church, who is joining us for the very first time from Stanton, Texas. Thank you. And now we go live to Calgary, Alberta in Canada, where Amy Cartwright will offer our invocation. Welcome, Amy, to Beyond the Walls.
Our Creator God, we gather together from locations around the world to pause, to reflect, to sing, and to ponder. We come together to express gratitude for this moment in life and for the spark of divinity we recognize in each other. Despite our distance, we feel the spirit and goodwill that binds us to one another. We pray that our time today will be refreshing so that our eyes, ears, and hearts will be greater attuned to those around us, perhaps especially in our online communities. We know these means of communication can be difficult for many, either because of difficulty managing current technology or because online spaces can feel emotionally difficult to navigate. May we be leaders in kindness, thoughtfulness, truth, and compassion, that we may contribute to a better world wherever we happen to interact. We meet today at a time when our world continues to grapple with loss of life, loss of routines, loss of connections, and loss of livelihoods. Many are weary. Grant us strength to lean upon our communities, to be forthcoming in sharing our burdens, to ask for help when needed, and to grant it when called upon. This is our prayer as we sing and share today, that we may be moved upon to be respectful, compassionate, empathetic, and kind. May we ever be learning and striving to be more accepting of one another as we individually and collectively navigate what it is to be human, what it is to build community, and what it means to belong to one another. Amen.
Thank you, Amy. And now we go to Woodbridge, Ontario, where Bryce Taylor, the Executive Director of the Sionito Group of Charities here in Toronto, will give our peace lesson. Bryce, we're very happy to have you with us here on Beyond the Walls.
Yes, pleased to be with you and the Beyond the Walls community today. Every week, John, I listen here at Beyond the Walls as we try to get our minds around this word, peace. The theological Christ can be expressed as the peaceful one, but I'm not too sure about this historical person, Jesus. When the peaceful one is mentioned, the iconic image I can't get out of my mind is this Jesus on the Temple Mount, a place where the sacraments reign supreme, perhaps historically, one of the most sacramental places of all time. And what do we have? Tables being overturned, money scattered across the marble floor, pigeons escaping from cages that are rolling down the steps, tripping people as they run to get out of the way. And in this strange happening, in the strangest of all places, we have two groups of people on the sidelines, something like those in modern times watching the news. One group secretly saying, "Go for it, bro, it's about time." Then on the other hand, others asking, who in God's name does he think he is? It raises the question, how do we do Jesus as we move toward the peaceful one? One of my most memorable experiences was with Wilfred Winholtz at his breakfast table one morning, saying to a very young appointee, "You know what scares me the most?" I replied, "No, Wilfred. What scares you the most?" "What scares me the most is that someday I'm going to wake up and at breakfast decide to follow Jesus." When I take communion, that kitchen conversation often comes to mind. It raises the question, how do I do Jesus as I move toward the peaceful one? Actually, deep down, we all know how to do Jesus. His was a restless peace, seeking out tensions, usually focused on the marginalized of his society, especially the impoverished. Peace for him was about being in the middle of things, both in dialogue and in response. And so it raises the question, how do we get into the middle of things in our Galilee? How do we do Jesus as we move toward the peaceful one who resides in the middle of the tensions of the marginalized? In Toronto, Sionito Community Development Corporation is a charity who used this status to receive government funding and community partnerships to move itself into the impoverished sectors of the city. It is in the middle of things in the downtown areas of Toronto. It provides safe, affordable apartments with life ability services to marginalized seniors impoverished by the challenges of mental health disabilities. With COVID, it is in the middle of things. Our latest challenge is that surprisingly not everyone agrees to vaccinations. So how do you do Jesus in a setting that isn't moving peacefully toward their own safety? Presently, in our sector, we have Zoom meetings that include 4 hospitals and many nursing homes and retirement homes, some with heavy losses of death. Sionito's Bill McMurray residence has achieved the highest vaccination response of any of the other housing providers. One doctor who knows us commented to us that this surprising achievement could only have happened in a residence with a high sense of community, both within the staff and the resident population. It appears that you do Jesus by moving towards peaceful community. Developing a sense of community may be the way toward the peaceful one. Still COVID-free, the Bill McMurray residence continues to work on getting the last holdouts to be vaccinated. We will see how it turns out. For our community of Christ, if developing a sense of community is the way towards the peaceful one, then we are already well on our way. In the past, often we were simply a group of marginalized immigrants, and then we found ourselves in the middle of things. Not many groups can say that. As a people, we've actually tried to bring heaven down to earth, not once, but several times, and in real geographical places. In terms of religious tensions, we have experienced them all, and in doing so have come to realize that consensus discernment and faithful disagreement, with a few rule changes, can move us through the tensions towards the peaceful one, who resides in the peaceful community. So allow me to read as the prayer of peace today, the long-lasting vision statement of the Sionito group of charities. It's taken from the writings of Maxim Gorky. There will come a time, I know, when people will take delight in each other, when each will be a star to the other, and when each will listen to his fellow as to music. The free people will walk upon the earth, people great in their freedom. They will walk with open hearts, and the heart of each will be pure of envy and greed, and therefore all people will be without malice, and there will be nothing to divorce the heart from reason. Then, life will be one great service to each other. Then, we shall live in truth and freedom and in beauty. And those will be accounted the best who will the more widely embrace the world with their hearts, and whose love of it will be the profoundest. Those will be the best who will be the freest. For in them is the greatest beauty. Then will life be great, and the people will be great who live that life.
Amen. Thank you, Bryce. Thank you for your ministry and for being with us. And now we go live to Redmond, Oregon, where Judy Luffman will lead us in our Disciples' Generous Response. Hello, Judy. How are you?
Hello, I'm fine. Thank you. In our faith community, we have learned a lot in the last few years about being generous people, but that isn't a new idea. In the Old Testament books of Exodus and Nehemiah, the authors wrote that God commanded the people to give the first and best portions of their harvest as an offering to God, which even included their herds and flocks. By giving the first fruits as an offering to God, the Israelites acknowledged that all of their harvest and herds, in fact, everything they had, came from a generous God. The offering of first fruits was also an expression of faith that something else, for instance, the successful harvest of the rest of the crop, would come later. Their first fruits offering acknowledged God's sovereignty over everything and expressed thankfulness for God's provision and anticipated what was to come. Dale and I were married in 1970, just a few weeks before we both started teaching for our very first time in the same elementary school building. He taught grade 5 and I taught music to all of the elementary grades in that building. As you probably can guess, first year teacher salaries were pretty modest, and we also had a bit of college debt to pay off. So our disposable income was just barely enough to cover our needs. In spite of that, we both felt strongly that we needed to live by the concept of offering our first fruits through church tithes and offerings. Exodus chapter 23, verse 16 states, "You shall observe the festival of harvest and of the first fruits of your labor, of what you sow in the field." And in Nehemiah chapter 10, verse 35, we read, "We obligate ourselves to bring the first fruits of our soil and the first fruits of all fruit of every tree year by year to the house of the Lord." Obviously, we were not living an agrarian lifestyle, but the concept was a guide to us in allocating money for our tithes and local offerings before spending on other needs and wants. A more recent understanding of a disciple's response has enlarged the concept to reflect our whole lives as a first fruit offering. When we are intentional about sharing more than just our money in gratitude for the gifts we've been given, we are partnering together in being about Christ's mission. I invite you to consider what might be your first fruit offering. What talents do you have or could develop to assist in helping abolish poverty and alleviate unnecessary suffering? What part of your day or week would you be willing to devote to pursuing peace? What testimony are you willing to share to invite people to Christ? What part of your income, in whatever form that might be, are you willing to contribute as tithes and offerings to Beyond the Walls, your local congregation, and the World Church, as together we develop disciples to serve and experience community in mission? I am carrying on what Dale and I committed to as first fruits givers. I hope you will consider doing this too. Please pray with me. God, the giver of all that we have and all that we are, we desire to respond to your generosity by offering the first fruits of our lives. We offer this with grateful hearts. We seek your blessing that what we give of our time, our abilities, and our riches will help to create your kingdom of peace and love on earth. Amen.
Thank you, Judy. We have 2 questions to consider today. What might be your first fruit offering? ¿Cuál podría ser tu ofrenda de primeros frutos? Quelle pourrait être votre première offrande de fruits? That's the first question. The second question, how do we do Jesus as we move toward the peaceful one? Quelle conception nous faisons-nous de Jésus alors que nous nous dirigeons vers le paisible? ¿Cómo hacemos a Jesús mientras nos acercamos al Pacífico? Te invito a compartir tus pensamientos en Facebook y en YouTube. As always, I invite you to share your thoughts with this community on Facebook and YouTube. Je vous invite à tous et à toutes à partager sur Facebook and YouTube. And I thank you, as always, for coming together today as this congregation Beyond the Walls. I thank you also for giving like to this video and for sharing it. That way we can invite people to Christ every week. Thank you for that mission. With just a click, you're doing mission, helping us draw the circle wide. For that, I thank you. Pour cela, je vous remercie y por eso te doy las gracias.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Leandro. And now we go around the world to Newport, Wales in the United Kingdom, where Rand Irons-Scelsi is here to read our lectionary. Welcome, Rand.
Thank you, John. Pleased to be here. Our lectionary reading this week is taken from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 1, verses 21 through 28. They went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, he entered the synagogue and taught. They were astounded at his teaching, for he taught them as one having authority, and not as the scribes. Just then, there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be silent, and come out of him." And the unclean spirit, convulsing him and crying with a loud voice, came out of him. They were all amazed and they kept on asking one another, "What is this? A new teaching with authority? He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." At once, his fame began to spread throughout the surrounding region of Galilee.
Thank you, Rand. And now we go to Independence, Missouri, where Danny Belrose will give today's message. Hi, Danny, welcome back.
Thanks very much, John. It's always a pleasure to be here beyond the walls. Singer-songwriter Harry Chapin's Mr. Tanner is not about singing. It's about discovering what matters most in your journey of wholeness. Mr. Tanner was a cleaner from a town in the Midwest. And of all the cleaning shops around, he made his the best. But he also was a baritone who sang while cleaning clothes. He practiced scales while pressing tails and sang at local shows. His friends and neighbors praised the voice that poured out from his throat. They said that he should use his gift instead of cleaning coats. But music was his life. It was not his livelihood, and it made him feel so happy, and it made him feel so good that he sang from his heart and he sang from his soul. He didn't know how well he sang. It just made him whole. His
Danny?
Yes, thank you so much. Just realized that.
Oh, there's back. Okay, sorry, Danny. Go ahead.
We'll start again. How's that? Singer-songwriter Harry Chapin's Mr. Tanner is not about singing. It's about discovering what matters most in your journey of wholeness. Mr. Tanner was a cleaner from a town in the Midwest. And of all the cleaning shops around, he'd made his the best. But he also was a baritone who sang at local shows. He practiced scales while pressing tails and hanging clothes. His friends and neighbors praised the voice that poured out from his throat. They said he should use his gift instead of cleaning coats. But music was his life. It was not his livelihood. And it made him feel so happy. It made him feel so good that he sang from his heart. He sang from his soul. He did not know how well he sang. It just made him whole. His friends kept working on him to try music out full time, a big debut, rave reviews, a great career to climb. And finally, they got to him. He would take the fling. And a concert agent in New York agreed to have him sing. And there were plane tickets, phone calls, money spent to rent the hall. It took most of his savings, and he gladly used them all. But music was his life. It was not his livelihood. And it made him feel so happy, and it made him feel so good. And he sang from his heart. He sang from his soul. He didn't know how well he sang. It just made him whole. The evening came. He took the stage, his face set in a smile. And in the half-filled hall, the critics sat watching on the aisle. But the concert was a blur to him. Splatters of applause. He didn't know how well he sang. He only heard the flaws. But the critics were concise. It only took 4 lines. But no one could accuse them of being overkind. Mr. Martin Tanner, baritone of Dayton, Ohio, made his town hall debut last night. He came well prepared, but unfortunately his presentation was not up to contemporary professional standards. His voice lacks the range of tonal color necessary to make it consistently interesting. Full-time consideration of another endeavor might be in order. He came home to Dayton, was questioned by his friends, and he smiled and just said nothing. And he never sang again. Excepting very late at night, when the shop was dark and closed, he sang softly to himself as he sorted through the clothes, for music was his life. It was not his livelihood. And it made him feel so happy. It made him feel so good. And he sang from his heart, and he sang from his soul. He did not know how well he sang. It just made him whole. He gazed at the mirror, confused, frightened. He had no song. It was dead. Shocks of unruly hair, streaks of gray, jutting chin, unshaven, eyes deep, dead, sunken, unseeing, hollow cheeks, large, misshapen nose. He squinted, closed his eyes and opened them, but it was still there, the haunting reflection mimicking his every move. No, no. He struck the mirror again and again, his bleeding fist spattering and staining shards of broken glass. He gasped, shook his head. The mirror laughed. Its fragments instantly reassembled. The demonic reflection smiled knowingly, miming Meshuggah's shock. Be gone. And then Meshuggah saw the scar, his scar, the scar that had tracked down his left cheek since childhood. He began to shake. No, no, he has my scar, he cried. The voices were back, voices in his head, laughing, crying, arguing, straining to remember his name. It wouldn't come. But he knew the scar. Don't we all? Do we carry our scars, or do they carry us? Meshuggah screamed. The face in the mirror screamed. Together they screamed, a cacophony of voices, red, raw, and their spittle sprinkling the mirror, blurring who and what Meshuggah had become. The screams wouldn't stop, couldn't stop. They echoed from his wounded soul. And nobody listened. Mark's gospel includes 4 exorcism stories, primarily to emphasize the power of Jesus' word, not necessarily what Jesus had to say. The scribes and Pharisees in the Capernaum synagogue were amazed at the authority, but we have no idea. Mark doesn't tell us at all what Jesus taught them. Looking at this scripture, there's so much that one can explore. But the focus of my sharing today will not be exegetical. That is, it will not be an analytical interpretation of our text. I want us to spend some time with Meshuggah, the man who rails at Jesus, because, you ready for this? There are times when I rail against Jesus and I fail to recognize the Holy One. Our overriding questions that I want you to consider this morning are these. Can we recognize the Holy One? And for that matter, who is the Holy One? Meshuggah was a broken man, deranged, demented, a man who may well have suffered a severe psychotic break, a man who no longer sang from his heart and his soul, a tragic, nameless, soulless creature who is a mystery unto himself. Have you ever been broken inside, soul sick, filled with anger? I have. Have you ever been a mystery to yourself? Have you ever felt rejected? Have your silent screams remained stilled, unaccepted, not heard? Mine have. Meshuggah attended the Capernaum synagogue each Sabbath without fail, until his ranting, mumbling, stumbling, weeping, crying resulted in the scribes unceremoniously casting him out. And yet the day that the teacher came, the day that Jesus came, he sat quietly among the scribes and Pharisees who marveled at the authority with which Jesus taught. But then Meshuggah began to whisper, each sentence increasing in volume. I know him. I know who he is. Don't listen to him. Don't listen to him. I know who he is. Stop, Meshuggah. We can't hear him. Be quiet. But the voices told me, I know who he is. And before they could restrain him, Meshuggah leaped to his feet, shouting, what do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God. I have to confess to you that I'm not a fan of brokenness. Brokenness theology, that is. Because brokenness theology emphasizes our shadow side. When brokenness is our song, its chorus is a never-ending litany of defeat. Woe is me. Woe is me. Jesus can do it all. Malignant brokenness kills the soul. Its specter is unworthiness, a license to wallow in our deficiencies, causing us to surrender to meager achievements and baser claims. Sure, everyone experiences brokenness. I do, you do. But brokenness is not spiritual impotency. It is the call sign for healing because we have forgotten the Holy One that resides in us. We are whole. We're just not complete. The Holy One that resides within us, we are the whole. We are just not complete. We are the works in progress. Wholeness is who I am, good and not so good, at any stage of me becoming me. The dominant theological mandate in Jesus' time and his culture was wholeness. Be perfect as God is perfect, emphasized by a preoccupation with the politics of holiness and purity, rituals and rules and sacrifice, governed by this whole idea of being perfect and holy and pure, centered in the temple and legitimizing the social order. Jesus didn't go there. Jesus recognized his own brokenness. Yes, you heard me correctly. Jesus knew his limitations, even if we don't. We can wrap Jesus so tightly in a blanket of divinity that we smother his humanity. Jesus turned everything upside down. How do you do Jesus? Well, listen, his mandate was not be perfect as God is perfect. He changed that. He turned it around. Be compassionate as God is compassionate. Well, let's go back to our questions. Can we recognize the Holy One of God? And who is the Holy One? Sometimes the Holy One comes to us, perhaps as a child, a school crossing guard, a song, an infant smile, a glorious sunrise. I penned the following day after one of those glorious sunrises. I think I saw you today. I didn't say hello. I should have. Deep, dark chocolate eyes, shining with wonder, drinking life in, swallowing me and everything around you, taking me in with that fleeting glimpse, that toddler's grin and giggle. I should have said hello. I think I saw you today, where I should get the light, late for that meeting, that PowerPoint presentation, painting your career. Run, run, run. Nice suit, nice tie. I should have said hello. I think I saw you today. You put on weight, snug uniform, tight, confining, a frantic wave, sign raised, traffic stopped, children safely crossing. Was it really you? I should have said hello. I think I saw you today, dressed in black and dusty gray, thinning hair, paper skin, cane and wheels for feet, laughing with the children playing in the park, hungering for a smile. You paused and waved. I should have said hello. I think I saw you tonight, wrapped in drops of rain, clothed in blades of grass and sun-kissed clouds, a sizzling orb of flame drowning deep at dusk. I heard you sing today, whispering in the wind, chirping feathered melodies, a bee buzzing by some flowers. You held me up today, sustained my gait, gave me life and daily breath. I should have said hello. Got up late today, showered, shaved, same mirror, same face staring back. I don't think I saw you. I should have. I should have said hello. In the film, The Music Box, Hungarian immigrant Mike Laszlo has done well for himself since arriving in the USA, nearly as dated by the film, 50 years ago. He's particularly proud of his daughter, Anne, a successful lawyer. Following the release of some secret Second World War records by the Russian, Mike finds himself accused of being a notorious Hungarian war criminal. He's convinced it's a communist plot to discredit him and insists that Anne, Jessica Lange in the film, defend him in court. And she does a tremendous job as his lawyer. And then she discovers indisputable evidence pointing to his guilt. She has no other option. She confronts her father, his denial framed in silence. I love you, she says. I love you too. There is in this poignant moment the searing realization that her own father, a man she deeply loves, respects and reveres, has committed unthinkable, monstrous acts. And yet, there also hangs in this moment the promise of forgiveness, the promise of release, the irrational erasing of that which indelibly stains his life. There hangs in the silence a readiness. Yes, even the birthing of eagerness to forgive. Not a truce, not forgiveness at bargain basement prices, not to say that such horrific deeds do not matter, but because they matter so much, forgiveness dangles between them like a whispered promise waiting only to be claimed. Forgiveness, unspoken, yes, but right there, as close as the breath they breathe, clean air, waiting to be inhaled. Forgiveness, the blending of the unblendable, not denial, not the hiding of pain, but the pathway of pain to healing. I love you, he said, and then silence. Buried in each other's embrace, both holding it first tentatively, then tenaciously, desperate to hold back time, her heart pounding, waiting for a confession she does not want to hear, his lips sealed, unable to speak it. His mind whirling for the first time in decades, the words of freedom, wanting to rise in his throat, choked back by denial. So many lies, so many years, so much to risk. For to tell her, he must first tell himself. A silent pause, pregnant with fragile hope upon which a lifetime of relationship teeters. Ironically, in a sense, forgiveness is already actualized in the broken heart of his daughter, articulated in her declaration of love. Love, a bridge which spans the widest alienation. You can almost hear her in her mind saying, tell her now. He need only speak the word. The moment passes, the opportunity lost, the bridge untraveled. He turns and leaves, the words not spoken. And this single deed, undone, weighs more damage upon his soul than all he has ever done. How tragic when forgiveness dangles in the air, unclaimed, when love seems too good to be true, when the Holy One is not recognized in his daughter and not recognized in himself. Now, the four Gospels, of course, are filled with nameless people. Intentionally, Jesus' parables are intentionally cast with faceless, nameless individuals. A certain man had two sons. A man fell among the thieves. A Samaritan came by. A merchant finds a treasure hidden in a field. A woman finds a lost coin. The innkeeper makes room. When I hear the story of the prodigal son, I can hear my own name. That's me. I have gone my own way, dwelled in a far country, forgotten who I should be, found myself again. I know what it is to run home, to meet a loving God and to be granted forgiveness. When I read about the Good Samaritan, I know that could be me, should be me. Who do we recognize as the Holy One? Let me suggest this. The Holy One, anyone who lives compassionately, anyone who gives us shelter, feeds us, raises us, protects us, loves us, forgives us. A Muslim, a Hindu, a Buddhist, an agnostic, an atheist, anyone, even you or I, anyone who comes in when the whole world goes out, anyone who divides sorrows and multiplies joys. Conversely, friends, there are times when I am Meshuggah, railing at Jesus. What do you want with me, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to transform me again? I know who you are. And we know who you are, Meshuggah. Meshuggah was nameless. Meshuggah was not his name, it was his label. Meshuggah is a Yiddish term meaning madman, senseless, insane, someone out of his mind. What was his real name? Well, fill in the blank. Give him a name you recognize. Someone so deeply damaged, they no longer recognize themselves in a mirror. Isn't it ironic? I find this absolutely ironic. The demons in Mark's exorcism stories prove to be more perceptive theologically than the scribes and Pharisees. They acknowledge Jesus as a powerful miracle worker and the authority with which he taught, but they do not recognize who he is. For 8 or 9 months, I have been unable to preach a sermon void of COVID-19's increasing invoice of physical, spiritual, and emotional annihilation. And today shall be no different. Globally, friends, more than 2 million nameless souls have died. Not nameless to those who sat at their table, laughed at their jokes, cried in their sorrows, raised them, loved them, befriended them, brothers, sisters, moms, dads, school chums. We cannot assess or access the immeasurable landscape of grief, anxiety, anger, depression, and the rising level of suicides sweeping the globe. If the Holy One has eyes, they're your eyes and my eyes. If the Holy One has ears, they are your ears and my ears. If the Holy One has a wounded heart, it is your heart and my heart. Friends, I know personally the folly of inflated self-help. I know what it is to stare at a mirror and wonder where my joy has gone, where my faith has gone, where my song has gone. I know what it is to say, I know what it is to say, I am all right when I'm not, put on a happy face when it's not, and to cover my scars rather than accept them. But I also know what it is to rediscover and recognize that a portion of the Holy One is within me. And also have the courage with that Holy One in me to seek help from someone trained to listen, counsel, and point to paths of healing. Friends, if you are in that ballpark, if you are tight and anxious and depressed and are unwilling in some way to acknowledge that you need help, I pray that the Holy One in you will move you to do so. The Holy One of God resides within and without. Listen to his song. It's a song of pain and loss, but also a song of healing and hope, calling you to look in the mirror. Take ownership of your scars, physical, spiritual, emotional, and seek help stripped of self-reliance. The Holy One may be next door, across the breakfast table, behind an office desk, or someone in hospital greens, someone prescribing medication, providing fresh understandings, helping to restore who you are and who you are meant to be. You're meant to be someone that's no longer nameless. You have given us a name, God, a name broken, blessed, and shared, a name written upon the heart, inscribed on mind and soul, that falls from lips in holy litany, a name taken upon us at water's edge, with hands imposed and prayers confirmed, with knees bent, wine poured, and bread broken. You have given us a name, the Holy One who points the way, whose words shake and disturb, heal and harbor, judge and forgive, whose hands held fast by love in lieu of nails, stretch wide to receive us as his own, broken, blessed, and shared. Sing your song. Sing it from your heart and sing it from your soul. You may not know how well you sing, but it will make you whole. Amen.
Thank you, Denny. Let us pause and take a deep breath. Breathing in, spirit. As you breathe out, let go. Respira profundo. Y mientras exhala, suelta, relájate. Inspirez. Expirez, laissez-vous aller. And now let's turn the attention towards the word. Turn the attention with your whole mind and also with your whole soul and even with your whole body. Not just up here, but everywhere. Breathe in, breathe out, let go. Recognize the Holy One. Reconoce al Santo. Reconnaissez le Saint. The Holy One resides within and without. As you breathe in and out, listen to the song of the Holy One. And what kind of song is it today? A song of pain, of loss, a song of healing and hope, calling you to look in the mirror. Breathe in, breathe out. Take ownership of your scars, physical, spiritual, emotional. Breathe in, breathe out. Recognize the Holy One. Reconoce al Santo. Reconnaissez le Saint. The Holy One who points the way. El Santo que señala el camino. Le Saint montrant le chemin. Breathe in, breathe out, and let go. And now, as you turn your attention back towards the space and the people around you in your location, as well as this assembly gathered from places around the world, consider once again what might be your first fruit offering, and how do we do Jesus as we move toward the peaceful one.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Leandro. We want to thank everyone who makes this ministry possible. Leandro for video direction, for leading the choir, for Spanish translation, and so many other things. To Christian Vago, who does the French translation tirelessly, and we love it so much. And thank Parker Johnson, Mary Jean Belrose, who are always there on the back end, making sure all of this is working in great order, unmuting, muting, all the other wonderful things that happen. Roger Dodson, who joins us every morning to set the tone as our chaplain of the Zoom meeting. And of course, Mike Karpowitz, who his ministry of music, all of the piano playing and everything is just so amazing. We do have an announcement. So this week we will actually have 2 Beyond the Walls services. We're having a special service on Saturday, February 6th at 6 p.m. Eastern. And this is going to be a service in celebration of the sacrament of confirmation. Evan Charley will be confirmed as a member of Community of Christ Toronto congregation, and we'll stream it normally, and you'll have the invite and so on. We invite you to participate in this wonderful service. And now, as we conclude, I invite you to sing once again with the Beyond the Walls Choir, hymn number 87, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing.
Tune my heart to sing thy praise. Strings of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet, sung by flaming tongues above. to rescue me from danger, interposed his precious blood. Oh, to grace, how great a debtor daily I constrain to be. Let thy goodness like a fetter bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, oh, take and seal it for thy courts above.
And once again, thank you to the Beyond the Walls choir. And so, as we go forth, I invite you to go forth with the words of Paul to the Galatians in the beginning of chapter 5. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. You who are trying to be justified by the law have been alienated from Christ. You have fallen away from grace. The only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love. Amen. I invite you to wait with me after the postlude, and I will be checking in with the ministers to see how everyone's doing.
Thank you, Mike. And thanks to all our ministers. Now we're all on camera, on live stream. So I'm going to invite everyone to unmute if you wish. And John, I see you're at your post already.
Hello, I made it over here to the library, and great to see all of your faces again. And I want to thank everyone for a service that was really moving, and I think also very meaningful and also challenging, but also I think very needed in this time. And so, wow, what an amazing service. Thank you so much. I guess I would start in the chat and say hi to Rand. You know, we haven't had you on before, and we don't frequently get to chat with anyone in Wales. And I wondered if you might tell us a little bit about what's the church like where you're at, and your local congregation, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so there are 3 congregations in Wales officially. One of them is more like a house group and is primarily made up of Apostle Richard James, his family, and me. There's also 2 congregations in West Wales that I travel to. So I'm affiliated with the Nethley congregation in West Wales, which is the oldest continuous Restoration Church branch in the British Isles.
Wow.
So they've been around since the 1830s. And they were LDS, and the RLDS missionaries came, and then they became RLDS. But the congregation's been there since the 1830s, which is quite cool. So it's a small group, but there's obviously a rich history in South Wales of Welsh members of the church.
Exciting. Actually, I wasn't expecting to have that story, and I'm so happy to hear that. I wasn't aware of that. So this shows why I don't know, we need to do a better job of highlighting and sharing international church history. We did that with the Community of Christ Historic Sites Foundation lecture series in last fall, and anyway, so that's really cool to hear that story.
Yeah, it's good. I like it here.
Well, thanks so much for being with us and for sharing that with us. Also say hi to Amy. So we're very happy to have you on from Calgary, and we've had a bunch of people from the congregation there tell us about kind of the exciting things that Calgary is doing in terms of your new facility and how that's going forward. And I don't know if you have any updates for us or.
Last time I checked, we're pretty close to being able to get started on the actual acquisition of the space as we've been starting to move in. Pretty exciting. I'm
Very
really
exciting. I mean, I know that a mic can be on the volume on that. Your microphone's a little quieter.
Yeah, I'm okay. I forgot. I'm here now.
That's okay. We heard you. And so the other thing I was going to ask, because I know you have, some young kids, and that one of the things that I feel like we've talked about, like how everybody is struggling in different ways with COVID, but I feel like mothers with young kids especially are been called upon to do so much more than almost anybody else during this time, especially if you have kids that are in an age range where they're just not as, you can't just send them through, they won't sit in front of like a Zoom learning and that kind of a thing.
Yeah, we are in a little bit of a unique situation where I've been homeschooling our kids for a few years. So that aspect of like how to handle their education hasn't changed too much, except for the fact that, I mean, a lot of people are like, well, you probably already know what you're doing because you're homeschooling already, but it changed because homeschooling in a past life looked like a lot more meetups and friend groups. In some ways, it's been the hardest year because there are legal allowances for children to be together in a school, but not outside of a school. So, that's been really rough, not having friends and not being able to call upon other mom friends to speak to toddler for a few hours. So that part's been difficult. All in all, though, I feel like I feel really guilty anytime I complain about it because I feel like we're set up the best to be able to handle things. And in some ways, there have been some really great things that have come out of it. But, I think we're all really ready for this to be done, right?
Absolutely. Well, and by the way, even though obviously we are aware that different people are struggling more and less, especially compared to where the pandemic has also highlighted the intrinsic weaknesses and unfairness and injustice of our safety net and society in general. I'm talking too much with my hands, I hit the microphone here. And so nevertheless, I don't think we should beat ourselves up and be guilty, even if we think that feel guilty, even if we're doing a little bit better at it. So I applaud, anyway, as your work as you're going through it. And I'm very happy that that's been going well. Judy, I was so excited to have you back on. And also, I really appreciated your message because we don't always get back to basics when it comes to what we're doing in terms of our disciples' response. And you're putting into context both of going all the way back, but also, you know, where we are in terms conceptually in a new time and place where we find ourselves.
Yeah, that was the very first thought that came to my mind after you had, you know, contacted me to participate today. And so I thought, okay, well, I've been praying to be discerning of the Spirit's nudges, and I figured, okay, maybe that's one. So anyway, I think it is helpful for us to get back to the basics in a whole lot of ways. And Danny kind of helped with that today as well.
Absolutely. One of the things, we've had more than one recollection and complaint here in our congregation where people remember we had these wonderful stewardship booklets that we used to fill out in the RLDS church. We actually have a bunch of them here in the archives too. And in some ways it was easier when we were called upon to do it when it was just doing the math, as opposed to being called upon in new ways now for figuring out whole life discipleship and making one's entire life and giftedness, challenging that to be first fruits life. But I appreciate that you put that question in front of us.
It's a question that I live with all the time as well. So.
Thank you for sharing it with us. I want to thank Bryce for coming on. I know, Bryce, you were extraordinarily busy because of everything that's been going on in terms of obviously for Bill McMurray being, that facility is one of the things when we talk about being on the front lines in terms of the pandemic. And in the middle of that also, you're in the process of producing an entirely new project.
Yeah, it does get busy every once in a while, but it's kind of what Danny was saying today. We have to assess, you know, where the core sense of our activities are, and so I'm pleased to be here and have the time to do this. So thank you, John, for inviting me.
Well, absolutely. And anyway, I've also been just so happy that the inoculations have been available to everyone who's willing to do it. And also was wonderful the fact that the response in Bill McMurray has been so much better because of that community building concept that is at the heart of the Sionito model for the social housing. Yeah,
it's come along, and it's come a long way since Alfredo has come onto the scene with us. Alfredo has transferred his career into the Sionito setting, and he's really doing a marvelous job. It's interesting when you see people even on that Zoom meeting. The first question is, okay, Alfredo, how are you doing down there? You know, like he's got a personal relationship with the CEO of the crazy hospital. So I'm not sure how he does that, but he has the right personality for this job, that's for sure.
Absolutely. We're so excited that he's been able to do that and spearhead that and take the lead. And even though that means that no matter how many times I've invited him to come on here, he's unable to because he is too busy. And so I appreciate what he's doing because that is really, really important work. Roger, it's good to see you. We don't always get you on for the after chat, and I'm glad you're back on. So what we all experience here when we're seeing this kind of Brady Bunch Zoom grid here is that we all see this as a minister's meeting before the service starts, and Roger always helps us set the tone and brings that. And anyway, so it's nice to have you on and have you with us again in the after chat.
Right, it's always a pleasure. Like I get to see both halves. Like I know what goes into putting the service together, and it's always a pleasure coming before it goes live to get to meet the different one who's going to bring ministry to our global congregation. And the people at home see the slides, they see everything that goes on, where those who are bringing the ministry who are on this end of it do not have that privilege of seeing all that goes on behind it. So I see both ends of this type of service, and each one that's here is like that poem I shared before we went on the imprint. And each one that's gathered here today has an imprint in other people's lives. And it starts way back when, many years that each one of us have come in contact with others, and we each leave a huge imprint as we go forward. So I'm always thrilled to be part of this every Sunday.
Can I just jump in here? One of the imprints I have of Roger is sitting in a police car reading the scriptures. Like that's crazy. And, that was years ago that and he was actually studying for a certificate or a diploma or a degree, and he was doing it in his police car.
Yeah, well, from that, I never pushed religion or the church. I tried to live it. And I had so many officers who were my partners that would come to me in the course of our career, and still do to this day, asking for advice and so on. Yeah, I remember that well. I started that in 75, and I finished in 2002. So I'm a slow learner. It was wonderful. And like I say, everybody, and I talked to Daryl Belrose about this just the other day, looking back at each one of our lives, how we were, the impression from, and I said, I corrected, you made me who I am. No one can make who you are. Each one of you help us or cause us to become who we are. And with Bryce, we go back over 45 years.
Be careful.
And there's a lot of history there. And when you take a look at the journey for in our lives and the imprint way back when, not knowing that we're going to be sitting together 45 years having a conversation. So the imprint, each one has touched somebody's heart somewhere along the line, and I am greatly appreciative of that.
And in that way, it's also cool for me in both Roger and Bryce's case, both are former pastors of the Toronto congregation here, and they are both mentors who I work with very regularly. So Roger, I look forward every week to our call. We have a phone call, and it's we just enjoy it so very much. And Roger provides so much, it's pastoring for the pastor and ministry and support. And it's just so vital and meaningful to me. And I always get off the phone and Mike says, he knows that it was Roger because of how happy I was as I was talking. And he says, how's Roger? And I says, Roger's happy, because every single week. And Bryce as well, because I'm able to work with them in the Sionito charity. And so Bryce is actually one of the very few people in the last year that I actually have regularly met with in person, not just on phone and thing as we get together for the meetings for that.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Thanks again. And Danny, I want to thank you for your moving and inspiring message today. Before we were even got on today, we were talking about how you and I have a lot of theology in common and conceptually. But one of the things that I think is just immediately, and it was so obvious to me that, when we talk about there's different spirituality types and there's different ways that we might approach the same conception. And my failing often is, you're talking about, you're not going to do this exegetically or having an analytical analysis, that when I'm giving a sermon, people criticize and say, this is too much like a history professor lecture and not as much like a sermon. And so if everybody is tired of that from me, that you're getting the opposite way, the other path not traveled, to this amazing poetic path to take you to that place with Danny. So thank you so very much.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I just want to remind the novices and the beginners to be sure to unmute yourself. That's important. What happened was I had consolidated the screen over to the left side to the point where there was just about 3 little heads, and when I unmuted myself, I unmuted Judy. thinking that I unmuted myself. I want to say hello to Bryce, my good friend Bryce. We don't go back 45 years, but we've got kind of a combination spiritual conception here, connection, I should say. Hi to Judy. And Amy, I used to be part of that Calgary congregation. Penelope and I went there for 3 years, maybe longer. Yeah. So, and Roger, hi. Yeah, I appreciate very much that you can forgive someone too. Following up a little bit.
Well, and I also want to say I appreciate the vulnerability with which you're willing to share, and especially when we're talking about strained emotional, mental, spiritual crises that we can't help but all be feeling, and again, as the pandemic has made them even more afraid. Actually, I think I know more people who have died either from suicide and so on in this time than I personally have known as, I don't know, I don't want to make this statement, but anyway, so in terms of having died from the actual COVID. And so in other words, there is the rest of the suffering, beyond the pain and suffering from the disease itself, which is massive.
Yeah. I think, at least personally, what bothers me at times is that I've become numb to the numbers, just numb to the numbers. At one point, it shocked me, it upset me. And now I look at the screen on a morning, and there it is, a new number. Well, it isn't a number, and you just have no idea. And it's a small number. It's not the total thing that's happening at all. There are many more who are dying, and beyond that, people who are really stressed out. But it's a number, right? And I feel badly sometimes. I think, okay, another 4,000, just a number. Yeah, it's bad.
Well, I mean, I think it's inevitable for us as human nature to because somehow this thing that we're all doing, which we never would have imagined ever before, and is unlike anything that's actually been in the entire history of the church, or and so on. It's now somehow routine, even if routine is such a weird routine that we don't know what day it is, and so on and so forth. It's crazy, and it's not what we anticipated, and yet people normalize, right? Your brain makes that happen in order to go on.
I didn't say hello to Mary. I love you, Mary. Don't tell your husband.
Of course not. Just our secret, yeah.
Just ours.
just the two of you and the other 800 people in the room here. So, well, thank you once again. Oh, wait, let's go to Leandro. Leandro, has anybody written into the chats things they want to ask about, or responses to the many questions that have been posed?
Yes, we have quite a few thoughts. So thank you so much for sharing your ideas, your thoughts. If you haven't yet, please do so just before we end the live stream, so we can compile all those answers, and we will publish them in the Beyond the Walls Facebook group during the week to continue discussion. Those of you who are wondering whether it's possible to get a copy of the sermon and all those wonderful poems, we will also hopefully will be able to publish at least some of that, if not all, soon. And yeah, I don't have anything else except the translators. The translators are not happy with this kind of sermons. I just want to point out, it's too much work for the translators.
As far as publishing and sending the copies out, send out the part where I was muted.
Okay. Yeah.
The best part. Well, once again, thanks to everyone for participating. I'll remind everyone who's watching still that we are having the 6 o'clock Saturday Eastern Time service, but that doesn't mean that we're having a regular service the following day as normal. So you can just go ahead and be part of both of those, and let's all of us maybe wave to everyone as we say goodbye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, Rand.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye. Have a good week.
Thanks, Mary Jean.